All right. That's the second most fun I've had today.
Sir, you have any thoughts that you know?
I have very few thoughts. I have very few thoughts indeed.
Please share those few thoughts.
So I'm a little bit curious. Before you joined, you said you struggled to picture a place for you. You've been in now for
4 years.
Jesus.
Yeah, time flies.
Yeah. Excuse my French. Time does indeed fly. So you've been in for 4 years. Very clearly, you can picture yourself as a lieutenant.
Yes.
Where do you picture yourself moving forward?
So I've been very fortunate. Back, talking about my initial days trying to go through the recruiting process. When I first reached out to a recruiter and started talking about moving forward with enlisting, it was also around the time I was competing for Miss Rhode Island. And that's a fact that I really tried to avoid ever having come to light in my military career. That made to be very hard because good captain over here actually photographed my enlistment and it was on social media. So that was very evident that there was Miss Rhode Island in the ranks. But I was initially talking to the recruiter and he's trying to put a time out for when I could go to MEPS, take the ASVAB, all of that. And he had brought up what happened to be Miss Rhode Island week. He said, "Is this a good week for you?" And I said, "We're going to definitely have to avoid that week. I have a thing." And I kind of paused and he's like, "Okay, what thing do you have that's more important than this?" And I thought real hard about this. I'm like, don't say it. Don't say it. This is going to be something that's going to follow you. And I just went out and said, "I'm competing for Miss Rhode Island this week. And I really can't do anything for the military until this is over." And I was expecting, I don't know what I was expecting, but I was not expecting what came next. And he said, "Oh my goodness, my best commander ever was a former Miss Rhode Island. And you guys need to connect." And I'm like, "Okay, sure. Yeah." He's like, "Oh, I'll give her your phone number and you guys can talk." And lo and behold, I get a call from, at the time, Lieutenant Colonel Gloria Berlanga. And I'm like, "Oh my God, she was Miss Rhode Island. She's a big deal." And we talked and she was so welcoming, so friendly. And that in itself was a great lesson for me in seeing how far women are rising in our ranks and knowing that in that connection, I had somebody who I could reach out to who's at the top of our organization and was very involved and has been in our organization in a variety of capacities. So that initial connection, of course, has grown over the years, and she's somebody who I consider a mentor and somebody who I can lean on. And of course, now she's full bird colonel. And it's great to have a role model like that. So I could easily see, years from now, me moving on up the ranks and being in the same boots that she's in, so to speak. And I love the Guard and I see endless possibilities and opportunities here. And I just see this as the way forward for my career.
So on that subject about, you competing for Miss Rhode Island. So you haven't always been met with positivity around that. And I'm curious how you deal with that negativity because, people might have different equivalencies. People are going to get all kinds of different statics. So what are some good ways that you've dealt with that? Any negative feedback of saying, "Hey, you just got that because you did this or because you have this or whatever"?
It's great being a public affairs person because you're able to see the best in any opportunity because you're always presenting everything with the best foot forward. And that is something I dealt with. It did get back to me that another person in this organization had said, she's not really qualified to be where she is. She's only there because she was Miss Rhode Island. The only reason she's in her job is because she was Miss Rhode Island. Being Miss Rhode Island didn't inherently, just having like that title didn't inherently open doors for me and just say, "Okay, here you go. This is yours." Being Miss Rhode Island, however, gave me a media platform. It put me in front of many cameras, in front of many interviewers who were difficult, who were tough. It gave me the ability to do work in my community that was positive for me and positive for the community. It gave me the means of advocating for myself and putting myself out there and doing things that I wouldn't necessarily do. I mean, if you're willing to walk on national TV in a swimsuit, you definitely have had to work through some of that in your mind and say, okay, I can do this. But it gave me the confidence to be where I am now. And it's so much of what I did as Miss Rhode Island is inherently a skill of public affairs. So yeah, nobody just said, okay, you were Miss Rhode Island, therefore, cool, that's fine, you're qualified. But I had so many other qualifications and strengths that were enhanced because of that. So next time I hear that, I would gladly say, sure, yeah, I was Miss Rhode Island, but it gave me education, it gave me skills that are necessary to do my job, and it enhanced all of the qualifications I already had. I'm not just here because I was a beauty queen, and reducing women to just being a beauty queen or what have you is inherently sexist.
It's so much more.
There's so much more behind that. And anytime something like that comes up, you have to flip the script on that and advocate for yourself.
Just so we can put that rumor to bed forever, can we just quickly go over your academic credentials? I just want to, for the audience out there at home, let's just never talk about this again.
Ever.
But also your internships.
Yeah. So I was at Syracuse University and had got a dual degree in political science from the Maxwell School of Citizenship and Public Affairs and the Newhouse School of Communications for Public Relations. So two of the best schools in their own respective fields in that right. I went to Brown University for a master's in public affairs, and then I went to Salve Regina on a full scholarship, thanks to Miss Rhode Island, for administration of justice and homeland security with a focus on cybersecurity and intelligence. And I've continued my education. I take advantage of the state tuition that we get in the National Guard. So I got a certificate and an Associates of Arts at CCRI focused on emergency and disaster management, because that's a huge component of what the Guard does too.
So there you go. Anyone who thinks she got the job because she won Miss Rhode Island is just objectively incorrect.
Yes.
It's just a milestone in your career.
Yeah. It's a bullet on my resume. And there have been times where I'm like, do I keep that on my resume? Do I take it off? And I've left it on there because if anybody doesn't want to work with me because they think Miss Rhode Island was fluffy or insignificant, and it's not somebody I want to work with, there was so much more behind that. And again, Miss Rhode Island gave me the opportunity to travel across the country. I was speaking in different schools and venues about women in leadership and reframing perspectives and reframing language that's used around female leaders. We were talking about this before the interview, where we were joking that we're annoying to the captain over here. And I said, we're not annoying, we're persistent. And we have to do that so much as women, because women will be framed as aggressive or shrill, or my favorite is, oh, she's really motivated, or she's really ambitious. And it's used as like a negative thing where it's like, oh, she's so ambitious. And if it's a man, it's like, oh yeah, he's really ambitious, like bright young officer or bright young man, what have you.
Put that bullet on his EPR.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, ambitious, reclaiming some of these things.
Yeah.
And everyone's staring at me. Just for the record, I find you both very annoying, not for any of those reasons.
Which is fine.
Yeah, that's
I find you annoying because you know my job better than I do, and you pose very good questions.
We make you
You hold me accountable for doing my job, and that's just
It's obnoxious.
We make you
it's
work.
so horrible.
We make you work for the bars.
It's because we're so ambitious.
I don't know. I feel that I've been respected for the same things that I've been despised for. So
yes. Yeah. That is a huge thing that women deal with.
yeah, and I feel like men go through the same thing but differently.
Yeah, so I'm just going to key on that because that raises such an interesting question. So in those cases where your character trait has both helped and harmed, how much of that has to do with, institutionalized misogyny, and how much of that is just the individual as an
I mean, it varies. There are definitely individual that are out there. But that is absolutely something that comes up all the time. And there was this really great campaign that I was super enthusiastic about as a college student called Name It, Change It. And it was geared towards calling out any media entity that had used language in a negative way about women or had sexist underlines in their writing about women, and calling it out and saying why that was sexist and problematic. And I mean, we can practice that any day when we think negative things about people. Okay, is this something that has to do with their gender? Is there that underlying internal misogyny there? And how can I reframe this? That might even improve some of your own personal interactions with colleagues. It might help someone along the way, and it certainly helps you not be.
I'm interested on the flip side of it, because am very intimately aware of the experience of being female in the military. So, give me some perspective, sir, on what it looks like on the other side to be both revered and respected for the same trait. Despised and respected for the same trait.
I wouldn't know. I'm not respected around here for much of anything. Sure would be nice. That being said, I spend an awful lot of time pondering this very question, determining if I am being inappropriately ambitious. Actually, that's not really a problem for me anymore. Am I being inappropriately respectful? Or am I being too mild, too meek, too inassertive? I mean, these are great questions to which, I have no wisdom to share. So again, if you're listening at home looking for the answers, I check with these two, but I got nothing.
Well, I feel it's very individualized, though, that experience too.
I think it is, right? Because in a lot of ways, our experience is very varied. Each of us has worked for different bosses over very different careers, over different time frames. And a lot of it's very similar. We all wear the same uniform, except you.
It's close enough.
We all work for the same organization. So, yeah, I don't think I'm going anywhere with this other than to say it has always been my interpretation to write things off as individuals being good mentors or bad mentors, being good humans and being.
So do you think, I guess to clarify, do you think it's more of your own perspective, like an internal perspective versus like an external thing?
It's absolutely internal, because I've never been in the position you've been in, right? Like, no one's ever asked me what I brought to the table, to borrow some of your language. So what I find so fascinating about these conversations is they're very enlightening, because I just have not seen the things you've seen. I've not experienced the things you've experienced. My framework for understanding the world is so far removed from your own that I feel like I'm always learning, right? And I look back over things that I've said, things that I've done, soldiers that I've led, and I say, gosh, I really hope I got it right? Because my framework at the time didn't include any of these thoughts. And all I can do is say, gosh, I really hope I got it right back then.
As close to right as you could have gotten.
Sure. At the very least, I hope I didn't drive anyone out of the military, right? Like maybe, at least they could get a better commander in later who can salvage some of the wreckage, perhaps.
And I think that's important that we're having these conversations, because you admittedly don't have to wake up and deal with some of the same thoughts that we have to when we put on the same uniform every day. And that can be said across the force. I, as a white woman, don't have to think about the same things that some of my counterparts who are people of color have to deal with when they're putting their uniform on and leaving for the day. And when we have these conversations, that develops empathy, and empathy breeds even better leadership within our ranks. And I think that's something that every single one of us can aspire to. And it's an ongoing process. You never fully arrive, but seeking to understand the people you work alongside and lead will only benefit you in the long run.
So I love what you're saying. And then to add to, that I kind of want to dig a little bit more on the captain's perspective and what he said about, how he sees things differently now. So now what do you do with that? Now that you have that knowledge, what do you do with that knowledge?
It's a great question. So that's why whenever we have these podcasts, I always ask things like, how does we create a better society? I want to key in on something you just said, though, in that you never really arrive. I do believe that wholeheartedly. I don't believe true equality as a destination. I do believe that true equality and fairness and openness and creating safe working environments is an ongoing, lifelong project. You're never done. You never arrive at that destination. So to some extent, that buys myself a little grace for myself to say, I will do better tomorrow. For me, what's really important to me in the way I lead my folks is I always make sure that I am approachable. For all the mistakes I've made, for all the things I do incorrectly, I think for at the very least, everyone who has ever worked for me has been comfortable coming to me and saying, sir, you done screwed this one up. Like, the pooch is done screwed on this. To the point where I've had like E5s corner me in my office overseas and just like absolutely crucify me over decisions I had made, which to this day I still believe in, but they were comfortable enough to, use my open door policy and just unload. So I think that's my go-to strategy. It's like, okay, I'm not going to get it all right. I sure would like to. But at the very least, let me be coachable. Let me be approachable. And that's how I try to get through it all.
And you bring up a great concept, which is grace. And I wholeheartedly believe in grace because that's how we're able to look at each other as humans and understand that we do make mistakes and there's a learning process and it's ongoing for all of us. And like empathy and equality, we never fully arrive. It's the same thing with leadership. I remember the day that I commissioned and it feeling like the most important day of my life, but also having to check myself and say, this isn't the biggest thing of my life. Maybe right now it feels like this, but it's what I do from every day here out. And it's not an accomplishment, but it is a call to action every single day to do better by people, to continue to learn, and to continue to develop as a leader.
So that's the second thing I'm going to borrow. That's the second piece of language from you. I'm definitely going to borrow. It is not an accomplishment. It is a call to action. I think that's really good.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the other one was. Oh, what was it? It was some program you said. And
Good thing we're recording.
I really hope that Hasbro doesn't immediately grab that and turn it into a toilet. See it, change it.
Name it, change it.
Name it, change it. Man, Hasbro, if you watch, I don't know why Hasbro would, but like, that's a great tagline for a toy.
But that's a great thing too, to look at and have that in the back of your mind next time you're reading an article or what have you, and you see something that doesn't sit well with you. It's like, and Dee, you're on Twitter like I am. We're big on mill Twitter. And there will always be people on Twitter calling out the headlines where it's like, name a famous actor's wife is doing this great thing for humanity. And you're like, okay, well, she has a name. Like George Clooney's wife, that was a big one. She kept being named as George Clooney's wife. And it's like, well, she's actually a very accomplished woman. You can just say Amal Clooney. You can give her a name. There's more to her than her husband. So a lot of that is still very insidious in writing and publications and everything. And you can find that everywhere and find ways to really flip the script on that. And in your own interactions with humans and our own writing and our own public affairs work. I mean, every day I'm looking at our public affairs social media and saying, well, is this inclusive? Does this represent our force? Or are we showing the same thing all over again? We want to make sure that the imagery that we put out shows that we are more than just a bunch of guys or what have you, that we're really looking for ways that we can change perceptions and show that we have this great, wonderful, diverse force and we're better for it.
Yeah. I think I forget exactly how she said it. Gil the Amazon.
Yes. One of my favorite people on Twitter.
About lethality isn't gendered.
Yeah. Lethality isn't gendered. That was one of my favorite tweets.
Think about that. Just because I'm a woman doesn't mean that I'm not lethal. Come on now.
There was somebody else on Twitter. It was a gentleman who said, yeah, it's been 2 days of the new grooming standards and everything's running smoothly. Everything is just as good, if not better. And hey, ladies, I'm going to need you to tell me some recommendations for a good, clear nail polish.
Yeah, I remember that too. So something that we talk about a lot is... No, I don't want to get into that. That's like a new thing.
Oh.
That thing that we talked about, oh, she's just going to get pregnant and leave. And it's a cop-out to not invest in someone's development.
Oh, yeah. Again, like deep,
have you ever heard that
gender
sort of
perspectives?
Oh, no, I've never heard that.
That sounds like a lie.
Sorry, it's really hard to be sarcastic with a mask on. We should probably get a sarcasm tag. Yeah, no. Oh, I've never heard that conversation happen. Big eye roll. Does that help?
Yeah.
It's such a cop-out. I got that for the first 8 years. Guess how many years I was in at the time?
8?
Yeah. I was like, at 8 years, I haven't. I'm still here.
It was a conversation. I told you about this. We're at our field exercise and people are talking about, and this is in Bolick, okay, well, who's most likely of the class to shoot out of the safety box and who's most likely of the class to do this, that, and the other. And they're like really bad superlatives, but that was one of them. Which one of your classmates is most likely to get pregnant to avoid a deployment? And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe that's a conversation we're having. Like, that's just feeding into a stereotype of women in the military that is already so awful. Toxic. And completely undermines the capability of the woman. And like you said, it's a reason and a cop-out that people decide not to invest in training women.
Do you cringe, sir, when you hear that? Because I cringe.
It makes me irate.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it makes me cringe on a personal level, perhaps the way that it makes you cringe on a personal level. It makes me very, very cringy on a human management, talent management level. Mm-hmm. From a very utilitarian standpoint, writing off one of your soldiers before they've made a mistake is just horrific leadership. Mm-hmm. But I'm not sure if that really applies to this situation.
Right.
I don't really know.
But again, as a company commander, what do you do to try to create a more inclusive environment? Well, you put an end to any conversation you hear that is along the lines of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Top. We're just not going to entertain that conversation is the correct response,
right.
I believe.
Yeah. Give people the opportunity to fail.
Yeah.
Or succeed,
And you can succeed out of failure.
Yeah. Right. I think that's something I would love to see. This is not a gendered thing at all, but failing forward. Mm-hmm. I think that's a thing that people struggle with as a whole. But, as far as our own growth as a team, that's been important to our own growth.
But you say it's not a gendered thing. However, failure really casts a negative light on women when it's easier for men to brush that off. And that's something oftentimes that people will hold on to. Well, she did a really terrible job with this. Okay, well, what about all of the good things that she's done? Oh yeah, that guy, he screwed up big time. Oh, but he's a great soldier.
It makes me think of that time I was in the parking lot at Dave's and just really having a rough day. And I was talking to you about that feeling of feeling like you're carrying the weight of your gender with every single mistake you make. Like, is this going to be the moment that they're like, women don't belong in the military?
Yeah. And it's stressful.
It is. And it's isolating when that feeling of carrying a burden on your own, it's very isolating. And there have been times where it has made me feel disenfranchised with my service and my oath. And, luckily I've had LT to, reach out to and be like, coach me through this because I am struggling today.
Yeah. And it's the same thing, being a woman and the men not necessarily having that notion. Every day we wake up, we put on the same uniform and we just want to do our job and we love our job and we show up ready to do it. But as a woman, there's that feeling that is sometimes so soul crushing where it's like, if I screw up, this is going to reflect the rest of the women that want to enter this space. And it's less in public affairs, because we have a different makeup in the office here, but like more so in artillery, personally for me, and I know with your background in combat comms, yeah.
Yeah. Especially for me, women were still kind of newly into those roles, like similar to where you are today. There were people at the time that still felt women didn't belong there. So, they're looking for you to make mistakes. But, you can take a step back and say, that situation does apply in more general spaces. Yeah. People are also looking just for anybody in the military to mess up.
Yeah.
So, you can, if you're empathetic, you can look at it from both the individual, where women come to the table with that, but also in general, where we come as service members to the table, and always having this standard to uphold.
And have that grace.
All right, so I think we're going to wrap up here so we can get you back to your 3:00. Any closing thoughts?
I hope this was of value. My biggest thing for anyone listening is think about ways that some of this perspective can shape your daily operations. And if you catch yourself with any of those internalized biases, check yourself and try to turn that around wherever you can.
Love it.
Thank you for joining us on The Hindsight.
Thank you for
I'm going to
having
press
me.
a button.
This is the Rhode Island National Guard Public Affairs Team. If you know someone or you yourself would like to come on and you have a story to share, we'd love to have you.
On The Hindsight.
On The Hindsight.
The artist formerly known as Experiences May Vary.
Cool.
We'll roll with that.
Did we nail it?
No.